Hey there, I'm April, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to properly install the Onduvilla shingling system. Now, unlike traditional asphalt shingles where you have a starter row with self-adhesive shingles, with the Onduvilla system, you're going to use a standard shingle. However, you're going to apply a foam closure strip on your starter row shingles only in order to close off these corrugations so that birds and insects cannot get inside of them and nest. So whenever you open up the foam closure strips, you're going to have two parts, the smaller part and the larger part. These smaller sections are going to be for the starter row, but do not throw away these larger ones because they'll be used later for your ridge pieces. And you can see that these just easily pop off, and then you're going to save this portion for your starter row. So whenever you're lining out your shingles to make your starter strips, if you have an Onduvilla color that has this shaded area, this is always going to be the top of the shingle. And so whenever you're laying them out, you want to lay it out to where the shaded area, the top of the shingle, is going to be facing towards you and making sure that they're all in the same direction. Now you're going to be taking your foam closure strip and you're going to be adhering this right above the second embossment line. To make installing these foam strips a lot easier, you can use some spray adhesive just right above the second embossment line. Now you'll notice that the shingles have 6 corrugations, but the foam strips only have 5. This is so that you can leave one corrugation open for your side lap later on. With the Onduvilla system, there's a minimum of 1 corrugation setback per row. So you want to start with the full shingle, but then on your second row, you want to cut off 1 corrugation to where it's only 5. And for this, the recommended tool is one of these hook blades. The Onduvilla shingles are 16 by 42 inches, and the recommended overhang is between 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So on this example, we popped our first chalk line at 14.5, which will allow for 1.5 inch overhang. Then all of the remaining chalk lines are popped at 12.5 inch intervals. When starting with your first shingle, you want to set it in place and have it set back off the rake just slightly, but definitely no more than 1/4 inch. And you also don't want it overhanging any, because later on you're going to be adding an accessory piece called the verge piece. Whenever you go to start running in your screws, you're going to be placing them right above the second embossment line, right where those closure strips were placed. You are going to skip the first corrugation as well as the last corrugation. The first one because you're going to have an accessory piece later on, the verge piece that you'll be attaching. And then this last corrugation because of your side lap. Now, of course, I'm doing this on a fake roof. This is a staged roof in the Onduvilla training room. Starting with the second row of shingles, you're going to be switching the screw location in between the 2 embossed lines. You want to start with putting in the outside screws first and then filling in the middle. So in this case, it's this corrugation and this corrugation, and now I'll fill in this one. So in this case, since there's only 3 corrugations, I'm only going to be putting a screw in the center. Now there are variances on how to install these, but you always want to make sure that you're set back at least 1 corrugation. And then of course, whenever you get up to the top, you can just start over with the full shingle. With the Onduvilla system, whenever you're running into your valley, all of the shingles need a 45-degree back cut. Next, you're going to be running a bead of sealant about 1 inch in from where you're going to be cutting the valley. You can take your shingle and set it into place and then secure it with screws. When installing the shingles going into the valley, you want to make sure that the screws aren't within 8 inches of the middle of the valley. And you can break the normal pattern of screws in order to maintain that distance. So when installing the verge pieces, you of course want to set it in place and line it up with the bottom of the shingle. Now when running in the screws, you want to attach the rake screws first, because if you attach the corrugation screw first, this is going to balloon out. But if you attach the rake screw, then what you can do is roll this corrugation over until it seats nicely on this shingle. When installing this flashing band, you want to overhang the fascia by 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Along the rake, after you finish installing the flashing band, you'll kind of finish by installing the verge pieces. You're going to set the closure cap into place, then you can take a pencil and mark where they fall on these corrugations. When installing these, you want to place them just above your lines and then do 2 screws right into the flat portion. Now you can put the cap on and fasten it down. When installing the standard ridge system, you'll still need a closure cap at the end of the hips and ridges. And you can fasten these down by going straight into the flats. The standard ridge cap is 18 inches wide, so you want to install this closure foam strip within 8 inches of the peak. Whenever installing this standard ridge, you want to make it flush with the end of this closure cap. Now when laying out your shingle for the opposing hip, you want to make sure that this corrugation is in line with this corrugation. And then whenever you lay down the next shingle, this corrugation will line up. Now it's important to line up the corrugation so that whenever you come back and install the ridge cap along the hip, the screws are in line with one another, but opposite. It's functional, but it also just makes it look great. So when you're sealing the hips, you're going to do the first 3 feet in the flashing band, then transition into the Onduline slim, breathable flashing band. Now same with the bottom. Whenever you're sealing up the hip joint along the top, you're going to do the first 3 feet in the flashing band, then transition into the Onduline slim, breathable flashing band. So this hip is almost done. We already have the closure cap on. So now we're going to take the slim cap and install it by lining up these 2 embossment lines. You can actually hear it seat, and then just secure it with screws. You'll notice that these screws are in line with each other but opposite of one another, and that's because we made sure that these corrugations were in line with one another. That's why it's important. Okay, that's going to be it for the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the information useful.